This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not burdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be happy. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be happy. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Okay, is the sound check working? Perfect. Okay. Well, one of the things that I thought would be interesting to talk about is a small section we find in the text very often, and it's how the Buddha actually taught to lay people. It's a section that occurs again and again and again, and yet when you look at it, it doesn't actually leap out immediately why this is significant or why they even bothered to keep it in the text at all. And yet it occurs the same pattern over and over and over. So what is it about this that actually is important for people? How does it work? And the thing that is tricky about it is that when we look at the first thing the Buddha taught to people is about generosity and heaven. Now, if you're a meditation teacher or you intend to be one, this is one of the most effective ways to get to clear out the room. Most people will be running away by the time you start talking about generosity and karma and rebirth and all the rest of it. It's not things they're interested in. So why were people interested in it back then? And this is actually where it gets more interesting, because we have to understand a bit more of the context of the ancient Indian world. That in some ways they have something in common with us, and in some ways something different, something missing. And one of the big problems is that their religious world, their spirituality, was very much tied to their culture. And yet, it was something that they were separated from. So the scriptures, the religious texts, the Vedas and the Upanishads were mostly taught and kept by the Brahmins, by the philosophers in their ashrams and in their little forest hermitages. The ordinary people didn't have much awareness of them whatsoever. They didn't have access to them unless they were a son of a Brahmin or a student of one. And yet they were thoroughly interested in this. How does this work? And one of the other problems that was tied with this is that many of the priests weren't necessarily living up to the high standards that they were telling everybody else to live up to, but also they were making grand claims about how all this worked. They claimed that when a person is dying, they had the power to command a person's soul to go up to heaven or down to hell at their own will, which is a pretty scary thing when you think about it. When you're telling people, oh, it's not about what you do. Yeah, exactly, your power is gone. It's all our power, so to speak. You have to behave, you have to fund us, you have to support us, you have to participate and fund these sacrifices, these purification rituals to be able to save yourselves. And so by talking about generosity, what the Buddha was actually doing was giving people their power back. He basically even said in the suttas, when people ask him, do the priests really have the power to do this? He said, if you throw a heavy rock into a lake, you have as much chance of telling it to float up to the surface as they do. If you throw a pot of oil into the river, you will have as much chance of telling the oil to sink back to the bottom because it naturally will float up. He says it doesn't work that way. It's how you train your mind. It's how you train your life. What are you calibrating your mind to be? And that's one of the things I often mention to people. What are we training our mind to be? If you want to go to heaven, you have to create a heavenly mind. If you want to go to a lower realm, well, knock yourselves out. It's quite easy to see how that works. But the thing is that the power is actually in your hands. It doesn't actually belong to anybody else. This is our choice of how to live. And that's the amazing thing about this. So when we look at it, what are we training our minds to be? Where will all this lead to? When we pass away or when we have a near-death experience and our life flashes before our eyes, it becomes very clear of how we've lived and what we've done. Even though we've tried to fool ourselves that we're doing the right thing, that we're living wisely and generously and all this foolery, we were fooling ourselves. And yet when the clarity comes, it carries on. And so this gives people the choice and the freedom to choose how they want to live and where they want to go on to. But when the Buddha's talked about this, he then talks about the next section, which is something we don't talk about very often, or at least I don't hear it talked about very often. Maybe you guys hear about this all the time. And it's a series called The Gratification, Danger and Escape. And this is also very, very interesting because it shows how we've landed in this situation. So the gratification is pretty straightforward to understand. We all want to be happy. We all want to have some nice experiences, some good times, some rich food and delicious things and lots of happiness. We all want that. But the danger is, what price are we prepared to pay for that? And this is something we don't really think about so much, is that there's lots of subtleties tied in with this picture. One example I like to give is to imagine that you've been busy working outside and suddenly you're thirsty. So you go into the kitchen to fix yourself a drink. And straight away it pops in your head, actually I'd prefer to have a cup of tea or coffee. And straight away you turn the kettle on. And you think, oh, well, it'd be really nice to have some biscuits with that cup of tea. And oh, there's a cinnamon bun left over. It's going stale soon, I'll have that too. Before you know it, you've got a plate full of food. You're heading over the table to have your coffee and going, actually, I'd prefer to sit on the lazy boy or on the sofa. And before you know it, that's where you are. And then before you know it, you've turned on the TV. And then 2 hours have gone by, and as someone quite neatly said to me, you're in a sugar coma, and you've wasted all that time. And yet you still haven't finished the work that you set out to do in the first place. In other words, the danger is we're not aware of what we're doing and we get caught up in this flow of desire. And there are other problems as well, because these are not repeatable. So at the end of this, when we've realized that 2 hours have gone past that we're not going to get back, we realize that, oh, I ate the last cinnamon bun, so I'm not going to be able to have another one of those. We aren't going to be able to repeat these things. A neat story an old lady told me is about her grandchild. Whenever her grandchild came over for dinner, she started making them as a treat, some sausage and mash. And all of a sudden the grandchild really liked this and started asking Grandma every time, can we have sausage and mash for dinner? And one day, Grandma did something slightly different. Now some of you who've had kids might already be thinking, uh-oh, big mistake, Grandma, don't do it, don't do things differently. And all she did is she just took the sausages and cut off the casings and shaped them into little rissoles, basically little burger patties, fried them up, served them exactly the same. That was the only difference. Youngster took one look at it, refused to eat it. And that shows deep down a very, very important thing, what's going on. We've associated pleasure in having our sausage and mash in this particular form. Slightly differently, we're thinking, hang on, this is not the same. I'm not sure that I'm going to get the same gratification out of this. I don't like it. I might be disappointed with this. I don't want it. And we get trapped in this whole cycle that we're constantly measuring and judging things according to what gratification it can give us. Then the next problem arises. How far will we go in doing this? Even if you live a 5-star lifestyle, sooner or later it gets boring. We look for the next pleasure and the next pleasure. It's never ending. And of course, if we're desperate and intent on doing it, we can turn into monsters. We can start to take no prisoners and do all kinds of terrible things in the world. And that's more or less a situation we see so much of in the world. Everybody's desperately pursuing their own gratification, their own desires to try and get some kind of happiness which they're never going to get. And that's the danger of this situation, is that no matter what we do, how long we do this for, it will never work out. The escape comes in, because it's a 3-part system: gratification, danger, and escape. The escape is seeing what the problem is. Ultimately, it leads towards nibbana. But the escape is seeing that we do have a choice. A glass of water is good enough. Learning to appreciate the things we have is good enough. We don't have to chase ourselves looking for the next best thing, because we already have everything we need. And that's the freedom in this so much. One of the next things the Buddha talked about after this, which is again where it comes very interesting, the Buddha said when he recognized people, their minds are bright and they're cheerful and everything else, because on itself this doesn't sound a particularly cheering doctrine to modern people. And you don't have to be a mind reader to tell when people are happy. You can see on their faces. If you've done a bit of public speaking, you can tell instantly what the vibe is and how well you're going. But this is very, very interesting. Just this sequence alone showed people a way to be happy, that the power of happiness is in their hands. And that was very freeing to them and very liberating to them. So that sequence alone was enough to make them happy. But I think there's something else to it as well, about the figure of the Buddha himself, is that this is someone who's done the job, who knows what he's talking about, who's let go of greed, hatred, and delusion. And so he's actually teaching from the goodness of his own heart. He's not a showman. He's not trying to, saying lovely words for some agenda or for, to fund some next project. He's actually teaching people how to open the door of their hearts, not how to open the door of their wallets. Big difference. And I think at the back of our minds, we're very aware of this. We know when we're listening to people, we're constantly judging in the back of our minds. And sometimes we should be listening to that a little bit more than we do. We're aware when people are putting a show on, when they're faking it, when they're trying to manipulate us. And that little instinct at the back of our mind is sort of saying, something's not right here. And yet when the Buddha speaks, this is a person where there is none of this corruption, because he's got no reason for doing it other than wisdom and compassion, for sharing what he's learnt, for sharing how to be free. He doesn't have any other agenda, because that's the whole point. He's let go of greed. He's let go of ego. He's experienced these noble, selfless states, seen the vastness and the beautiful states of mind. What other purpose has he to teach? He's not after money. But the thing is, after that, he says, so says the text, this teeny weeny little paragraph that repeats over and over and over of how the Buddha taught. Next, he taught the thing that was unique to the Buddha, which is the Four Noble Truths. And what's really interesting at this point is that the Four Noble Truths are connected to gratification, danger, and escape. So when we look at it, the first noble truth, that there is suffering in the world, old age, disease, death, all these problems, heartache, despair, lamentation, all these other problems, not getting what you want, getting what you don't want, separation from what you love, etc., etc. All these problems is the equivalent of the danger. So that's the interesting thing. In the gratification, danger and escape, the Buddha is talking about how we arrived at this situation. In the Four Noble Truths, the first noble truth is that same danger. This is how we got here. This is what the problem is. And the second noble truth is our attachment to our desires, following our desires, which is the gratification. And so they're linked again. Then comes in the escape. The letting go of these desires is the third noble truth. So they're all connected in this way. And I think that's something that's quite missing when we talk about Buddhism in a modern sense. We don't show how these things are linked. We almost talk about the Four Noble Truths as it's, quite honestly, I don't know how people, well, what they're thinking of when they talk about them, but, as if just mentioning them or reciting them is going to fix all the problems. Whereas when we don't talk about the gratification, danger and escape, we can't see how it all syncs together, how it all comes together. The only thing that's different from this is because when we see how these things link up, then comes in the fourth noble truth, the way to do this, by seeing with right view how the world is and what we're doing to ourselves and what we're doing to each other. Then right intention comes in, with right motivation, not harming ourselves and not harming others, acting with kindness and compassion in the world, and the renunciation, living simply, giving up these things. A glass of water is good enough. We don't need a coffee and a huge plate of sugar-laden treats. Treats now and again is fine, but we take it to excess because we're constantly thinking of the next bit of gratification, the next bit of pleasure. We're constantly desperately looking for that happiness, that fulfillment, that pleasure, because there's so little of it in the world. We're primed to do it, even from a very, very young age. As I mentioned, the story of the grandma with her young grandchild. That young kid is already doing this, already calibrating and looking, how can I get more pleasure out of the situation? And at the moment that her dinner was different, she's going, nope, not the same, don't want it, not good enough. And that's the trap we've landed into. And so we change our intention based on our right view. And that it changes how we speak in the world, because we want to help people more. We don't want to harm others. We don't want to get lost in frivolous conversations and blah, 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 and going off on whatever tangents. Wasting time. Pleasure in speaking can be a great distraction. It's a great way. You look how ancient people, they love to get together around the fire and tell stories and go late into the night because it filled up the time. It gave them some pleasure out of their, what was very harsh and, wild lives back then. We had things so much better now. And then we move on, right action in the world. All of a sudden, how we act in the world, we recognize because of this gratification and danger system, our priorities are going to change. We're going to be more intelligent about our action, what we choose to do. We're going to be more mindful in relation to it, choosing how to live a better way. And then we have right livelihood. Why are we going to work and take jobs which are destructive and harmful? What's the point? Just to buy this fancy new car or this new house, all this stuff that the advertisers tell us that we need to get to be happy and all that nonsense. All of a sudden we choose jobs which do good in the world, which lift us up, and even if we don't have the freedom and the luxury of doing that, at least we'll pay the bills so we can live in a good life that isn't too harmful, that isn't too indulgent, that isn't too at the expense of others. And then we practice the mindfulness, seeing far more in a bigger sense of what's going on, both inside of us and outside, and how they're connected. Most people like to talk about the outside and the inside. There's no separation really between them. And that's the big problem. Our outside actions in the world reflect our internal mind. They reflect our heart and our intelligence. And that's a problem. When we're damaged, angry people inside, we take out our frustrations on the beautiful and the innocent in the world. And we look at the destruction that we do. It's so widespread. And yet we're mindful enough to say, hang on a minute, we don't need to do this. We can catch it right from the beginning and choose a different way of doing this. Because this is the whole thing. Einstein famously said, the definition of insanity is in doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting something different to happen. And when you really think about it, most of us are a little bit more in the insane group than we are otherwise. That's how it is. So we get to choose how we want to live based on right view, based on right intention and everything else. And then we get to the right stillness, the meditation. Because meditation really calms the mind down. It brings us closer to ourselves. It's very healing and soothing and opening. It can create these vast states of mind because we've dropped all these barriers and firewalls that rule our lives. And this is one of the big things. We talked about earlier how when the Buddha talked about heaven, well, and how by calibrating our minds to be heavenly or to lead to that state of mind that is more divine, we have these things called the Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes. And for good reason, because that is the metta, the loving kindness, the compassion, the joy and the acceptance, the heart that can hold the entire universe. And these things lift us up. They don't drag us down into being vampires and ghosts and, the monsters in the world. And that's the thing. We have so much choice and so much freedom, but we've never realized this. And that's one of the big things when we look at the sequence of how the Buddha taught. By bringing in that opening to tell people that by practicing the generosity in heaven and understanding all these things, your future is in your hands. It's not under the control of some spiritual dictator. There's so much freedom there and so much opportunity. And then by showing the gratification, danger and escape, he's showing the mechanism of how we've landed in this situation. The choices that we made are basically geared just to give us some unfulfillable gratification. That the moment we have it, we will be looking for something else because it never fulfills us. It never gives us what we really need. And it drives us to doing some really horrible things. There's a neat little story I'm not sure if it's in the commentaries or in the suttas itself, but the Buddha describes this little bird who's found a little piece of meat on the ground and it flies off with its treasure to go and eat it. But straight away, other birds are on its tail because they want the piece of meat. And the Buddha says if that little bird doesn't drop it, it's in big trouble because it's going to be the next piece of meat. And that's the thing. We've landed in this great big problem. That's the danger. But there is an escape. There is a way forward. We can let this stuff go. We can be mindful. And so when we look at this is why it's such a workable model, you could say, because the Buddha teaches us again and again and again. It occurs a lot of the times through the text, but it's just reduced to this little paragraph that we mostly gloss over because it doesn't have a lot written about it. It's almost as if people understood from the beginning what it meant, or maybe they didn't. They just didn't even think about it. But it occurs again and again and again. The Buddha always taught in this pattern to people. And that's really, really useful to understand how the Buddha links everything together. We don't have that, I think, in modern Buddhism. We don't really teach this way, how it links together. We just teach different little bits and it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. We're just feeding you little bits of pieces now and again and then sort of hoping that you'll be able to work it out even if you only have half the bits in the box. It doesn't always work out that way. But who knows? When you see it all together, maybe it can start to become more clear the trap we've fallen into and the way that we can move forward. Now, I've been going on for about 25 minutes. Shall we jump forward into the meditation? I've pretty much finished.
I think that sounds fine, Venerable.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody, as usual, please stand up. Give yourself a bit of a stretch and adjust your clothes as you need to. And do all the things you need to do. It's always good to do this, because once you've already been sitting for 25 minutes, it's nice to be able to release a bit, because otherwise you're bringing this tension into the meditation. So we give ourselves the best opportunity while we can. Okay. And when we're ready, please close your eyes. And just spend a few minutes settling into the chair, into your room, into the space around you. It doesn't matter if there's noises or things in the background. It doesn't matter. At the moment, this is the time for settling down. Keep checking your body and adjust it as you need it. Take a nice few deep breaths, filling your lungs with good air. And breathing out the tension. And as you become more aware of your breathing, use it in sync with your body and in sync with your mind. Use your breath to connect to your present feelings, and use the breath to relax them. Let the energy of the breath fill your entire body, soothing and easing and relaxing. Maybe your body is telling you what you need, in which case listen and help it out. And as the breath becomes calmer, let it take you deeper. Deeper relaxed. Maybe allow yourself to smile. When you smile without breathing, it brings joy. And now imagine a beautiful light that fills your entire mind. And let this light have its quality, a quality that suits you, a quality of happiness and joy, or kindness, forgiveness, healing. Whatever the light brings, let it flow through you. And then let that light expand and fill your entire room, to spread that positive energy throughout the place you live. To spread it further through your entire home and your family. And now expand the light to include your entire street. And let it continue to expand as far as it can. we can practice generosity right now by sharing the wish for everyone to be happy, for everyone to be healthy, to everyone to have success in their lives, and for everyone to be free. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. And welcome back. Okay, when you're ready, you can ask questions. No questions? Nothing?
I think everybody must need a few moments to come back.
I want to ask a question. I recently realized that I think I asked similar question before, but since the question come up again, so I want to ask, because I realized that I probably spend around 95 to 98% of energy in human interaction to conceal my real self. I don't know how to say. I think I do want to be a little bit more authentic in front of people, but the fear really pull me back because I will afraid that other people will not accept me, or other people will laugh at me, other people will look down on me, or other people will dislike me. And because of all this fear, and then a lot of the time, I didn't realize I do that. I will interact with people, and I think I kind of pretend to be something that I'm not. And then after the interaction, I will feel super tired, and then I feel like I didn't feel like I had the kind of very fulfilling feeling with other people when I interact. And I just want to say how to gather the courage, to be more authentic, or to show more your real self when you interact with other people, because yes, this is something I kind of want to work on.
One of the things that really comes in is becoming aware of the deeper priority. So by and large, we try to get a good face. We try to present this positive side to people because inside we haven't really a good relationship with ourselves. We haven't really a good foundation and mindfulness within ourselves. The moment we start to change that, all of a sudden we're not looking for gratification from other people, and we're not looking to try and protect ourselves from other people, because it comes to a point that no one will ever understand who you are. Only you. They'll have their own projections, their own ideas and everything else, but they will never understand who you are. And even if they project what they think and who they think you are, they'll still be wrong because they don't know who you are. And that's one of the big important things. The more we understand ourselves, but also develop these good qualities that give us more confidence and more happiness in our lives, it really doesn't matter so much what other people think. We all know that they're going to have their opinions, and everybody has the right to their opinions because we have opinions ourselves. Doesn't really mean that we have to take them seriously, though. So a lot of the time is having a little bit of a sense of humour, seeing what people really think and how divorced it is from reality and how crazy some of their ideas can be. And that's where we start to look at it in a more positive light. Everybody's trying to project onto other people, because by defining who you are, I'm defining who I am. So in many ways, they're lacking that close relationship with themselves and authenticity in themselves, so they're trying to project it onto other people by trying to control the image of other people. And at the moment you can see how this dynamic starts to work, you realize that everybody's doing this, and it's completely unnecessary. And that way, the moment we reach that point where we see that actually we can have a really good relationship and friendship with ourselves, and that will start to make us more open and authentic with other people, because there's no hidden agendas anymore. And I think that goes a lot of the way to making us feel more happy and more confident. So I hope that helps.
Yes, I think it's, I kind of understand that, but it still hurt, if I know that other people didn't think good of me, it still hurt, oh my goodness. But I understand what you're talking about, so thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Sampa, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you for the talk and sharing with us. I have a question, it's about religion, spiritual paths and other religions. I came to the Buddhist Society of Western Australia many years ago, maybe more than 10 years ago, more than 15 years ago now maybe, just by chance. A friend took me there for no particular reason. She didn't think I needed help or anything. She just said, I go to this place and do meditation. That was my first encounter with Buddhism. It was Ajahn Brahma speaking that night, and I was really impressed when I heard him say the words during meditation, let go of the past, let go of the future. Anyway, so I kept coming back and I took a lot of wisdom from Buddha's teachings, and I understood that Buddha taught us to, we can ordain if we want to take it really seriously, and and I listen to a lot of monks all the time. I still keep that up. Listen to the talks. Lately I've been listening to Ajahn Sumedho, Ayya Khema, all these teachers. But I moved to South Headland, where I'm a school teacher and moved up here, and I went along to the Christian church. So my family wasn't too religious, but I guess the traditional religion of my family was Christianity. We never went to church, only on the odd occasion. And I went to the church here because I'd read that the Buddha said, if you find truth in any religion, accept that truth. And then I've met some Baha'is up here, and I hang out with them occasionally, or frequently. I attend their meeting once a week, and they asked me to become a Baha'i, and I did so willingly, because I thought, oh well, and they talk about unity. But when I went to the Christian church, I had a feeling that the door shuts like this. When I went to the Buddhist Centre, I always felt that I can go there and sit, absorb, practice, watch my mind, take the position of the observer, understand like the different phases of my mind. I mean, we all know this, I'm preaching converted, but you take the position of the observer, so you don't get too worried about your problems. You realise that everyone has them, you realise that the whole world is problems. When I went to the Christian church, I felt like they were quizzing me so much about my belief in God, and was I really one of them? And then they used this language, believers and non-believers. I was going to a Bible study class for a while as well, because my mind was open and I wanted to know more. I mean, how can you take one position against something with not knowing much? And the Buddha said, if you find truth in any religion, accept that truth. Anyway, so my question really is, so in one of the churches here, they were very quick to ask me to baptise, and then the minister began to tell me if I didn't, I'd go to hell. And even the Baha'is, as nice as they are, and as loving and equal that their teaching seems to be, they keep using the language of Baha'is, like naming us and them, and asking me to do devotional prayers and things. And I feel in a way that I'm an imposter when I'm in their company. I'm not really, because I think I've said what I mean. It's just a sense of confusion. I mean, with the Baha'is, I openly say I don't say I'm a Buddhist, I say I've learned a lot from the Buddha. The Baha'is are very open, and that part of their faith is accepting other religions. But with the Christians, one of the students I teach, the father was the priest, in fact, and he came into the classroom one day, and I asked them, did they have a Bible study group? And I was interested, but then he began to ask me about my religious background, and I said to him, I volunteered at Buddhist Society for a long time, and then he said to me about truth, and what do you understand to be truth? And I said, well, I'm open to learning. And Buddha, I think I might have said to him, the Buddha said, if you find truth in any religion, accept that truth. And then I didn't hear anything back, and I felt like... So my problem is, I find it quite scary when they start to tell me that I need to become a believer, or I'm a non-believer, or a believer, or a Baha'i, or not a Baha'i, and that the ultimate outcome is that when my body expires, as Ajahn Sumedho says, when this form expires, I'll go to hell. I just can't quite understand that. I mean, I don't think I'm that bad when you look at the full, full spectrum of human behaviour and everything like that.
Well, one of the Also,
she just said to me, recently I was at a funeral in Perth, a young person, she had died, and this lady came up to me at the tea that day, and something or other, and she was a Sunday school teacher, and then it quickly turned into a discussion on religion, and she said I needed to convert to Christianity. With God, all things are possible, and she began to say to me, I can tell you're seeking, and I said something along the lines of, well, I'm not a stranger to God, I'm not a stranger to religion. And I said, I volunteered at the Buddhist Society, or I used to attend the Buddhist Society frequently, and then she said to me, don't go near false religions. And she dissed out Buddhism a bit and said she'd grown up in Sri Lanka near a Buddhist temple where they sacrificed animals or something. And I thought to myself, this lady has no idea about Buddhism, because the things she gave me as examples of behaviour were nothing to do with the Buddhist teachings, and yet there she was telling me in the name of Christ, so her wise teacher, from whom she, guides her life. And I was really troubled by that, because she was so strongly convinced. And any true practitioner that I've met, I don't know, they're not killing animals in secret or anything like that, so that disturbed me, that encounter.
well, one of the big problems with religions at large is that there is this kind of eternal heaven, eternal hell paradigm. In Buddhism, neither heaven or hell is eternal, but it's kind of like you either have to believe in this or you will go to hell forever and you will be doomed, basically. But the problem basically is with religions is that they run on very, very similar models. So this is the name of the divine, this is the name of their representative, this is the name of the scripture, these are the dogmas, these are the beliefs, these are the feast days. You buy into this, you will be saved, and everybody else who does not accept our group will go to hell. However, that group over there has a different name for the divine, a different representative, a different name for the scripture, so on and so on and so on. And they're saying exactly the same thing. Only our group will be saved, everybody else will go to hell. And this is kind of the problem, is the difference between, say, Buddhism and other religions is that there's this strong investment in this belief system. Therefore, only if you believe in this group or this doctrine, whatever truth is to them, only then will you be part of that group and be saved. The issue is, as we sort of said before, this is why the Buddha taught right from the beginning, generosity in heaven and how they're linked. Therefore, it is what you do in life rather than what you believe. And that threatens a lot of people, because all of a sudden it drives back. It's not just believing in some sugar daddy God to make everything okay. It doesn't work that way. It's far more about personal responsibility in how we live in life. But at the same time, the Buddha said, he described it as this lost city in the jungle. And he said anybody who walks along this path will find that lost city in the jungle, and they can renovate it and create a little paradise there. So it doesn't matter if you're Buddhist or anything else. Anyone who walks the path will be able to find it. So that's very similar to what you're talking about, that essentially truth is truth. Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to avoid suffering. And just the approach that we have in so many cultures is this belief that only this way is going to save you. Everything else is rubbish. And the funny thing is that's also in the suttas itself. So many of the priests back then were saying exactly the same thing, that only our group knows, everybody else is deluded, only our group will be saved, everybody else will be damned. And that's kind of the issue, is that basically it comes down to, what do you know of yourself? Because the moment that you start being mindful, watching your own mind, how it leads you,
You'll interrupt. Sorry, one thing. Sometimes I just when I get nervous. Sometimes I think, well, I'd love to be one of those Christians. They're so good and they're meeting all the time, having lovely fellowship, as they call it. But there's some things I just can't agree with, or I feel if I have to. There are things. Anyway, but in a sense, sometimes I think, they're very deluded, because the Baha'is, all the Christians, they believe in this day when everyone will become a Christian. They keep repeating that. Christians in the Baha'is often talk as though we just need to get everyone to be a Baha'i and then the whole world will be sorted. But Buddhists never said anything so ridiculous. They say you have good karma to have encountered the Dharma in this lifetime and you can learn from it. Here is the door, like I said before. This is how I describe it to people. I say, the door is open. Come and listen. Try it. The other churches are saying this to me. Come in, quick. I think I've kind of got it. I just need to just say that out because it's troublesome. And when I meet these people, I don't seek to turn anyone away from their religion. And there was a really scary episode about that in the Bible when I did my Bible study. It said something like, better to cut off your own hand and blind your eyes than... I mean, oh, goodness me. But I'm not out to do that. I'm not out to challenge it. I'm not out to turn anyone away from religion, whatever religion they've found, because they're the benefits and the goodness that comes from religion. And I'm also not telling anyone I'm an atheist or anything. But I don't know. That's why I'm glad I'm just come back to this Armadale Meditation Group available now on Zoom. So I just thank you.
Excuse me, Venerable Sampasadana. I think Sky from Florida had a hand up some time ago. She may have a question. I don't know. Sky, do you?
Hi. Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I have new headphones, so I didn't know how they worked. Boy, what a nice welcome back, Venerable Sampa. You're just a delight. Lots of stuff. I love the way your Dhamma Talk put it all together and brought us right down to the Noble Eightfold Path. That was beautifully done. I had a question in the beginning about heaven, because just having lost my sister, and I've lost so many people, and everybody talks about everybody's getting together in heaven. They're having a ball up there, I guess. Personally, I don't see it. I don't feel it, but I feel that heaven is here in my heart. That when I think of somebody, they are in heaven in my heart. And I kind of like it that way. But if you tell me that all your relatives are in heaven and they're together, I'm going to agree with you because I want you to be happy. So I'm not really lying, but I want their vision. I accept their version and their vision of what heaven is to them. That's not my point here. I also had a feeling for Gloria, who I have many feelings for her. But about 15 years ago, I was in a ballet class. I'm not very good at it, but I love to go. And my girlfriend, who I adore, her mind and her everything, I was telling her what somebody said about me. And she goes, Norma, that's my real name, when are you going to get it? She says, what other people have to say about you is none of your business. So that like slapped me in the face in the best way possible. So I'm passing on that slap to you, Gloria, because you shouldn't care what other people think about you that determine how you feel about yourself. You are here, you are the Buddha, you are charming, you're delightful. So don't let anybody's thoughts about anybody should feel terrible. We all are insecure. Remember junior high school? I mean, the whole thing is a mess. Watch the dogs in the park. They're all insecure too. Nature must be insecure. So that was my point there, and I just don't really have a question. I just wanted to say that was one more thing, yes, about the Russell. I had buried my sister, a devout Christian with lots of bad habits, but I was going to hell when I found Buddha. I've been going to hell for the last 10 years now, I guess, but I don't care anymore. because I was losing my relationship with all my Christian friends. Some of them I didn't mind, but not my sister. So I desperately stopped trying to find the differences between us, and I desperately discovered what we had in common. Now, if she still thinks I was going to hell, that's for her to think. It's none of my business, right? But I found what we had in common is kindness and love. And those religions that want you to convert and stay and do this and that, just, I don't know, be careful. Just find what is in common between us, and then we can have more serenity instead of pointing out the differences. Because in the end, we're all the same. So I didn't really have a question, but I had all that to say. Sadhu.
May I say something, Bhante?
Mm-hmm.
In response to Russell's question, I was thinking of the question that was put to the Buddha in the Dhamma Sutta. How to believe all these wise people come and tell us, listen to us, listen to the other one, so on, so on. I was wondering if something of that might help clarify this conundrum that he was describing.
The Dhamma Sutta is a very, very important text. There's a lot. I think sometimes it's overused. Some people basically justify it for their own agendas, but it's a very useful text, and it's basically sort of saying don't take things for granted. As in the fact that the scripture says this, that the priest says this, or whatever it is, you don't really know. They don't really know. It's only through our own experience where we find out. And that's the whole point. There's a little bit of an emphasis on it that it is critical that we find what it is inside. And so we could be talking all night about the Dhamma Sutta. It's a really good one. But that's certainly something worth looking up for if you can find it. There are plenty of copies online, so you'll certainly be able to find it. But well worth looking up. Okay, any other questions? I think we've lost Chris. Oh, no.
Can I ask one question, please?
Mm-hmm.
It's in regard to the growth mindset and fixed mindset. From last few days, I have been a bit confused. Before, I used to plan for 5 years, and I would like to do something in those 5 years. But from last year or so, I'm feeling so contented and happy that whatever I have, I feel like I have enough. And sometimes then the question comes in a mind that everybody is working more than means whatever they are working. Should I be doing more, or I am stopping my growth, or because we humans are supposed to be having a growing mindset. But if I feel contented in whatever I have, am I stopping my growth?
Well, if you're listening to the advertisers, that's certainly what they want you to think. The answer is no. Quite honestly, the more contented you are, the closer you are to the present moment and the more joy and happiness you have, the less you need all this external stuff. This is the problem. This is part of the danger we talked about otherwise. People are externalizing their own growth on how much stuff they have, where they have the latest car, the latest house, the latest holidays, the latest clothes. You know, this is one of the weird things. Probably about 2-3 years ago, I was helping my parents clean out a bookcase. And there was these old magazines from the 1980s. I just flicked through them for the sake of it, because they were from the 80s, you know. And there was this advert for a car inside, and the advert was exactly the same as it is today, only the car was the most ugly thing that I ever saw and would never want in my life. And yet the thing is, we're trying to convince each other this is what you need to grow, to be happy. And it's a complete scam. It never works out, because the moment that you've got the latest car or the latest computer, there'll be another one. And then it will break down and everything else. Because we've externalized our personal development, our personal growth in this stuff, we've lost it. And this believing growth is really connected to that. Believe that, by expanding, by having more and more and more, we'll be bigger, we'll be more safe, we'll be more secure, we'll be more protected from all the chaos of the world. But here's the problem. Old age, disease and death, they're not apps that you can unsubscribe and delete from your life. We always have to come... We always have to come back to it.
I do agree with that, because we don't take anything from this world except our karmas. Mm-hmm. So rather invest in doing the right things than in materialistic things.
Yeah. See, the problem we've got is this drive for growth and everything else is trying to basically substitute our personal growth. So basically, to disempower you is to accomplish you, as I said before, instead of opening the door of your heart, it's all about opening the door of your wallet. That's really all we can say on it.
Yes, I do get it. Because when I get disturbed, sometimes I ask my daughters about something, because kids gives you the complete different innocent perspective. So I did ask 2 days before this to my daughter, who is just turned 15, so she said, Mom, don't worry about that. Maybe you are growing in a different way, like in a spiritual way, than having this growth. And that kind of justified me, but still I wanted to clarify that with you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Venerable, I see Steve in Tasmania would like to unmute and ask a question. Is
Yeah.
that okay?
Huh?
Steve, would you like to unmute? Steve, you need to push the unmute. There we go.
I'm good.
Oh.
Yes, I just had to work out how, Chris. Thank you.
Sure.
I'd just add to that this idea of growth, it's very much a human, a Western human thing. And even if you just listen to the Metta Sutta and think about all the other living beings that there is, our growth is at their expense. We are not being kind to other beings when we overexploit what is there, I suppose. That's the only thing that I would add to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is a big problem. What we do to the world is pretty horrific, because this is the danger again, is that it turns us into monsters. This constant need to have gratification, this constant need to have more and more and more, it turns us into monsters. And because when we hurt inside, because we know it comes from the expense of others, then we destroy things even more. Things that are beautiful, things that are innocent, things that are wonderful, we launch out on them so we aren't confronted by them, and we try to wipe them out. And yet here's the reality of the world that we're stuck in, is that we've turned this world into a place that unfortunately it can only support a bare percentage of us now. This is the problem, is that we're so stuck in this paradigm that we can't see any other way out of it, but then we're convincing ourselves just more and more and more is going to fix it. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Do we have any more questions? Would anybody else like to unmute and ask a question? Or make a comment?
Hello, I just wanted to say that I had a really very nice meditation, and I'm very thankful for the space and for the guidance, and feeling very peaceful and full of love. And I think the people I live with, they're gonna benefit from it today. So thank you a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Well, Venerable, if you are willing, would you like to offer us a blessing or a comment to close our evening this evening?
Okay. Jump in on a blessing.
It would be lovely. Thank you.
Nati me saranang anyang buddho me saranang warang etena sacha wajena sotite hotu sabada. Nati me saranang anyang dhammo me saranang warang etena sacha wajena sotite hotu sabada. Nati me saranang anyang sangham me saranang warang etena sacha wajena sotite hotu sabada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.